This is John Bailey, the epic voice of Honest Trailers, and you're listening to the Fiveish Fangirls podcast. It's a Fangirls podcast with five-ish people. The tangents and squee will continue. Squee.
The tangents and squee continue all the way to episode 465. Hey, that's an understatement. That runs around Indianapolis. Anyway, of the Fiveish Fangirls podcast. Oh my goodness. How do I do this? I am so tired. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Someone's a little punch drunk.
I'm a little punchy. It's gonna take some getting used to this sleep schedule. So anyway, welcome
at the virtual table. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Woo! Welcome everyone to Secrets of the Universe. Today, we'll be showing you how to make plutonium out of common household items. Oh, goodness. Oh, welcome everyone to this week's episode. Let's go around the virtual table and see who's joined us this week.
This is Chrissy.
Town Talk.
This is Chrissy in Salt Lake City.
This is Holly from Wisconsin.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Kind of wishes I was on Wheel of Fish right now. I would not take what's in the box because I'm not stupid. Anyway, yes, I'm a little.
They told us to rein you in, but it's kind of hard when it starts in the intro.
I know. You've got me sleep deprived, punch drunk, and talking about one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. This is a very dangerous combination. So. Woo! Okay, we're gonna dial it back a little. Just for a bit. It kind of helps that we got some 10 o'clock news. Not that that's a positive thing, but in this case, a downer can help.
It is a downer. That is true.
It is a downer. So Bob Newhart has passed away at the age of 94, and like I was saying to Chauncey the other day, it's like honestly, he's one of those that I kind of thought maybe he'd already died already, and I just kind of missed it because he's just old and has been old for forever.
Well, it was okay. So when we reviewed The Librarians,
yes,
yeah,
and, we were trying to get you to watch it, and you were like, "If you should have told me that Bob Newhart was in it, I would have watched it."
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we didn't know that was a prerequisite, but yes, so
yes.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up not with not a lot of variety when it came to television, because at home we just had regular TV, which usually stayed on the local PBS station, and during the day that was Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street. Then the evening, if regular TV was on, odds are we were watching like Star Trek: The Next Generation. Otherwise, we were watching Disney VHS types. The VCR was used a lot. But at my grandfather's, he had cable. But 99% of the time, if I was in front of the TV, it was on the Nick station, which back in the day, kids, during the day and during the week and on the weekends, it was Nickelodeon. And during the early part of the day, it was Nick Jr. That's when you get like your Blue's Clues and Eureka's Castle and stuff like that. And then in the afternoon, going into the after school, you got your Nick cartoons, your Doug and stuff like that.
Rugrats, etc.
And then you'd also get some of that on the weekend, and also like your Nick made for TV movies. And then the evening you had Nick Night. So it was all on the same channel. I think maybe now they're on separate channels. But back in the day they were all on the same channel, and the programming changed as the day went on. And at Nick at Night, that's when I had the Wanda Maximoff experience of watching things like I Love Lucy and the Dick Van Dyke Show and I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched. And that also included, in my case, I remember the Bob Newhart show.
Yes. Yep. And then they
not so
did
much
Get Smart, I
Newhart.
think, at one time. And I think they did some monkey stuff. And
Yep.
Lancelot Link, the chimp.
Yeah. So that's where I cut my teeth on popular culture sitcoms with stuff that had already been off the air for decades. It was when it was new, and I was catching it on Nick at Night. So my first exposure to Bob Newhart was from the Bob Newhart show, and he would have been significantly younger in that, because that's the show he had before he did Newhart. And then, of course, obviously, he's became a bit of a pop culture icon with his role in Elf, which he said was his like favorite role of his entire career. And yes, he was in The Librarians. He was on Big Bang Theory a few times as Professor Proton.
And he guest starred in one episode of NCIS playing a colleague of Ducky's.
So, and actually they killed off Professor Proton on Big Bang Theory years ago.
Right, yeah.
While Bob was still with us, just so they could have him come back and as a Force Ghost for Sheldon, complete with Obi-Wan Kenobi brown robes. So,
yep, that was the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. He just always seemed like the kind of actor he's like up for anything, especially in his later years, because show up on Big Bang Theory and all these different things. So it's I mean, the man lived to 94. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Your life expectancy. It's still sad that he's gone. And but yeah, I'm like, I need to go like marathon all the Librarians, because he's more in the Librarians movies, but he did show up in the show, like in the finale or the premiere and the finale and stuff like that.
Yes,
because he was such he was a big part of the movies, but as they did, they kind of like had the new characters take a bigger role in what was going on. But but he's always just a fun, engaging, sweet old man, funny.
And what made him so funny is just he was so like deadpan about everything.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what made it so funny. He was just like,
are you being serious or are you joking?
Yeah.
A very dry wit.
Yes.
It worked for him, and he made it work.
Yep. And if you're ever in Chicago,
that's right.
Over at Navy Pier, there is a couch that you could sit on, bronze, so it's not very comfy, but still, you can sit on it, and sitting right next to it in an armchair is a bronze Bob Newhart, ready to listen to your problems, because on the Bob Newhart show he was a psychiatrist. So yeah, that was my temporary profile picture on Facebook for a few days, and memorial. You'll also have to pardon me. My allergies have been absolutely atrocious in the last few days, so bear with me. It's like I'm getting con cred before I actually gone to the con.
That's
speaking of which, yeah, I know. Well, I've done this Gen Con thing enough times. I know what to expect. So it's like, get ahead of myself. Get it now before the cons, and then and get it done and over with. Speaking of Gen Con, their interactive map, which this is a kind of a new-ish thing. They've always had a layered map, so you could go from like street level to like the different floors of like the hotels and the convention centers, so you could get a better idea of where stuff is. But now it's connected to the events catalog. So in the events catalog, it has it has like the title, who's doing it, the time, and it also gives a location. And now you can click on the location for that specific event, and it's supposed to take you to where it is exactly on the map. The map is in beta, so just be aware that if you're using it, you are help testing it. Because this is a new feature, and also, and I agree, I don't know why Gen Con has not figured this out yet, regardless of whether the map is interactive or not, it is not orientated north. So
that's a little frustrating.
Yes, and it never has been. So, like, even when I'm looking at it, and I know, like, the layout, at least for Gen Con, downtown pretty well, and even I will get myself turned around because stuff is not oriented with the cardinal directions. So,
okay. I'm gonna go on a wee bit of a tangent here, because this happens a lot with maps, and whether it's a paper map or whether it's a digital map or something like that. Okay, map people, our brains are trained to consider the top of the map north, even if you mark it as, oh, we're doing something ski wampus, so that's actually gonna be east. No. If we need to turn the map, we'll turn the map so we can orient ourselves. You don't mess with that. Okay?
North is north.
North is north. If I'm looking at a piece of paper and it's right side up and it's a map, or if I'm looking at the app, because I get this with the apps and stuff all the time, it's like, no. North. If I know where north is, I can figure that out. We're fine. So stop trying to be cute. Yeah, that's it. That is all. I'm not going to Gen Con. It would, but I that's one of my pet peeves. It's an odd pet peeve, but it's a pet peeve.
A very justifiable one.
Yes. You know, I mean, it's not a big deal if I'm like, somewhere where there's mountains and I can be like, oh, that mountain's that one. But then sometimes I find myself without mountains and I'm like, what the hell? How do you people live? How do you guys figure out where anything is? And it's just trees. If it's just trees. When I lived in Florida, it was just trees everywhere. And I'm like, this is
give me landmarks.
Yes, I need landmarks.
Yeah. Well, if you would think, especially for something like Indianapolis, because downtown Indianapolis is essentially set up in a grid.
Yeah.
So all the streets are like straight, either north, south, east, west. So
left, make a right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like orienting it north would just like that would make things really easy.
That would make so much sense, but no, we gotta be cheeky.
I guess.
Not to be used for cheekiness.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and I guess apparently that's the case even if you're using the Gen Con app as well. So if you're relying on mobile, sorry.
Well, whatever.
No. I mean, once you're in the building,
oh yeah,
if you're struggling to find where you need to go, it might be helpful there, but trying to get to where you need to go.
But I would hope they would have like signs and directions saying, okay, this way to the ballroom, this way to these panel rooms, this way to this thing, and blah blah blah.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, yes.
Yeah.
So, but if you're newer to Gen Con and you're not used to like most of the stuff that I've signed up for, it's all part of the writer symposium because I decided to write a book, and that all takes place in the same hotel, so that makes it really easy. Like all the writer symposium is always held in one hotel. All like there are certain events that take place in certain locations all of the time. Like True Dungeon always takes place in the basement, essentially, of Lucas Oil Stadium. Things like that. But you learn that with experience. That's you could tell someone till you're blue in the face, and that's not necessarily going to mean anything. Is definitely you trial by fire more than anything. But anyway, there's that. At the very least, look at the map. Maybe not look at that map, but look at the other maps that they have, where it's just kind of a general layout of downtown and where stuff is, like the food trucks. Yeah, the food trucks are going to be on the street that sits in between the new end of the convention center and Lucas Oil Stadium, just like last year. So, you know, so I guess as long as you can find food, that's a plus. And Lucas Oil will be open for people to go sit inside and eat where there's air conditioning, which is nice. They did that last year, even though a whole lot was not necessarily happening inside Lucas Oil, but you have to have a badge. But you can, if you get something from the food truck, you don't have to sit out in the heat. You can go inside, and there's bathrooms that are not heavily trafficked, which is always a good thing. So, anyway, Gen Con next week. It's going to be fun. Between that and the construction going on pretty much all around downtown, it's, next week is going to be fun. Oh, my. Oh. There is that. I forgot. Another piece of convention news. I even shared it on our Facebook. Did I share it on our Facebook page? I'm pretty sure I did. PopCon Louisville, which is at the end of August, which will give me a lot of time to recover from Gen Con. Mike Coulter! We are getting Mike Coulter at PopCon Louisville. Sweet Christmas, Mr. Luke Cage himself. I'm quite excited. I have to decide if I don't have my Jessica Jones wig anymore, if I should order a new one so that I could bring Jessica back out.
Ooh, that would be cool. That was a good cosplay.
Yeah. Well, she's easy to wear, so.
Mm-hmm.
Jeans and a t-shirt and a leather jacket. Oh.
Yep. Let her go.
Yep. So, yeah, I may have to order a new wig and revive Jessica. So, anyway, there's that. And in the feeds, we went on a little tangent teasing it last week, but it's now out available for you to listen to. Chrissy's return to Gold Standard, where we talked about the Chipmunk Adventure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Quite the interesting discussion, because as I alluded to last week, this was a movie that I watched hundreds of times with my sisters as we were growing up.
Well,
and all three of the panel were like, no idea this would even existed, which kind of floored me, because I was like, oh, okay, but but it was fun. We had a good time, and it's always good to get in the Gold Standard Theater and chat about movies. So yeah, so check that out.
Yep. So there is that. Moving on to feedback. It's feedback from Shalane. Just a little bit. She says, first, the celebrity deaths, because we had a lot of them. I only know Shelley Duvall from Casper Meets Wendy, Hillary Duff's first show before she did the Disney Channel. Phoenix gets Mel Gibson, and Utah High School gets Kevin Bacon.
Yep. I think I mentioned
I'm
that.
more jealous of Utah High School.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that high school is still considered podunk, even with all the growth and development in that area. That particular high school is still small town, and that made me happy, because if you remember in Footloose, there's a scene where it's because it's this big field, and then there's like this building that's like a flour mill, and it's in the middle of nowhere. Well, now that flour mill, and it's still in operation. It's the roller mills. It's like basically in the middle of downtown. There's like a Wendy's and a Burger King and some Motel 6 and a bunch of other stuff just all around. And every time I drive by there, because it's like kind of off the freeway, I'm like, remember in Footloose? And that was like in the middle of nothing. I'm like, yeah, that's a thing. But so yeah, and then for the however many anniversary it's been since Footloose, the high school where it was filmed, actually.
I want to say it's been 40.
40 years. Yeah, I'm like, now you said 40 years. There's a Payson High School, a little town called Payson. They tried to get Kevin Bacon to come to their prom, even though knowing it was going to be a long shot. But it's like, hey, it's been 40 years. It was filmed here, maybe, and he did show up, so it was pretty cool. And it was quite the big deal. Although, speaking of FanX, we didn't get it in the news, but they did announce Gina Davis is coming to FanX.
Nice. Cool.
So that one was...
So now you're getting Thelma and Louise.
We are indeed.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Anyway,
yeah.
But back to Shalane's feedback.
Yeah. Says anyway, going to last episode about the Agatha trailer. I'm excited for it. Looks interesting. Let's find out more about Agatha. Oh, we will. We will.
Mm-hmm.
Captain America Brave New World looks amazing. Let's find out more about Sam becoming Captain America. Oh, we will. We will. I'm also getting more excited for Stranger Things Season 5. Wow, so much is coming for this finale. Yes, because it is the final season. Now on to Queen. I read that's how Lady Gaga got the name Gaga. It's from Radio Gaga. Yes. Plus, Lady Gaga has been inspired by Queen and David Bowie. She has a David Bowie tattoo and Madonna. Yeah. A lot of modern artists have been inspired by previous generations artists like Queen. So.
That is true.
I technically have a David Bowie tattoo as well. So, granted, it's David Bowie as Jareth from Labyrinth, but it's still David Bowie. So, it's the eyes. There's no mistaking those eyes.
Oh, yep.
Yep. Going back to FanX, I only know Susan Sarandon in Enchanted, James and the Giant Peach, Rugrats in Paris, and Little Women, the 1994 version. Well, you should watch Thelma and Louise, Shalane.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, you would probably enjoy Thelma and Louise now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we get
especially
a young
now
Brad
that Gina Davis is coming. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. And if you've not read, and by read I mean listen to the audio version of Gina Davis's memoir, which is read by her, you really should, because she's hilarious. And you get to find out how she almost went to the Olympics. Because the Olympics are coming up. How appropriate.
That is true.
Well, thank you, Shalane, for your feedback. As always. And moving on to this week's main topic. You want to talk about a movie that I have seen a bajillion times. You thought you wore out your copy of well, I never had this on VHS, but still, you thought you wore out your copy of the Chipmunk Adventure. Thankfully, my version is on the DVD, so I bought. Yeah, it's a little harder to wear out. It is possible, but a little harder. I also have it in digital too, so access it all the places. This is the 35th anniversary of UHF, the Weird Al feature film that Orion thought that they could dig themselves out of a hole and failed miserably. So let's look at
I mean, they gave it a good college try. I mean,
yeah, let's
be fair.
We need to roll it back a little, because like we've talked about, like, you know, box office and how there doesn't seem to be like a single formula for success when it comes to releasing movies. That is true. That still stands, you know, for the 100-ish years that you know, 100+ years that film has been around. Although not like you know, mass market released films, as it hadn't quite been that long. It's close. That being said, I know, you know, hindsight can be 20/20, and obviously we do have 20/20 hindsight here. But even then, just looking at the other movies that were released, summer of 1989.
Yeah, I mean, that whole decade.
This is the same summer that the Chipmunk Adventure was released.
Yeah.
Oh, Chipmunk Adventure was 87.
Well, that's true. But this is like the same idea, you know, that they were like, let's release this in, you know, the middle of summer, when at this point summer blockbusters were a thing.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I mean, that whole 80s decade, just chock-a-block with films.
Some years are not, you know, some are better than others.
But
yeah,
still, as a whole.
Yeah, as a whole, the 80s were pretty hype. So, that being said, granted, in the US, Weird Al was a decent-sized star. He didn't have his show yet. The show actually came after this. It was an early 90s thing. I also have that on DVD. Thank you. And he was not well known outside of the US and like Europe and stuff. But he had this idea alongside Jay Levy, who has been Al's manager since 81. They had this crazy idea for this movie, and they wrote their initial script, which was like 250 pages long or something like that, which is stupid long, especially for a comedy. Because in general, when it comes to scripts, a page is generally, this is not an exact science, but generally, when it comes to script length, a page is about a minute of film, of runtime. So if a script is 90 pages, it should be about 90 minutes long. So a 250 page script for a comedy is a bit long. So, that being said, it was just initial script, you know, first draft. But they liked the idea well enough that they shopped it around, and they weren't getting any bites. Even with Al's connections, in the industry. That being said, it got into a copy of the screenplay got into the hands of Gene Kirkwood's assistant, and Kirkwood's assistant gave it to him. He read it, he loved it, called up Al, told him to bring himself and Jay to the office. Kirkwood was all like, in a few weeks, you will be on set making your movie. And Al and Jay were just like, haha, sure. That was like June-ish of 1988, and they began filming the next month in July. So it got into the right hands enough of the right person, which is how it works. If you don't know who Gene Kirkwood he's a producer and actor. But he produced films like, Rocky. You may have heard of that one. um, uh, Get Rich or Die Trying. He's done some TV and some other stuff. So, not a bad resume. And they gave him a budget of $5 million. So they had to pinch every penny. So while Al is born and bred, from California, Linwood, straight out of Linwood, word. They knew that California would, but filming in California would absolutely blow their budget. So they decided that Tulsa, Oklahoma would be the place where they would film the majority of the of the scenes. A lot of it they used a shopping mall. There's like a wing of a shopping mall that like stores like the retail space had not been rented out yet by businesses, so they just used it. Like one store's, what would eventually maybe become like a Sears or something became the interior for U62. And another would be the inside of Channel 8. And then there was a hotel that I guess was like attached to the mall on the other end, so they just all stayed in the hotel, and then like if they needed something they could buy it from one of the businesses, or if they got hungry they got food from the food court. So it was like a nice little compact thing. And it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so overhead costs were relatively cheap. Obviously there are some exterior stuff. A lot of that is in and around bits of Tulsa. Adam LeWoo, actually, I'll have it linked in the show notes. But if you know Adam LeWoo, friend of Jacob the Carpetbagger, who we've had on the show, is a huge Weird Al fan. And he also, like me, UHF, one of his absolute favorite movies of all time. And like 11 years ago, back when he first started his YouTube channel, one of his things was going to filming locations for some of his favorite movies. So he went to Tulsa and tried to hunt down as many of the locations as possible. And that's still up on his channel, so I will have that linked in the show notes. It's definitely not the quality that his videos are now, but it still gets the point across. It still gives you the information you want to know. So you can go and see, the outsides of buildings, and sometimes insides of buildings that were used around Tulsa, and things like extras. They couldn't afford a lot of extras, so this is a story I did not know until recently. The grand finale of the movie, when they are reaching the tail end of their fundraiser, trying to raise money to save the TV station, they're out in the parking lot, and it's supposed to be packed full of people. And the thing is, they could not pay to get as many people as they would need for the shot, the look that they were wanting. So what they did is they used a loophole. So they put an ad in like the paper saying, we need cars to come fill this parking lot. And so, if you bring your car, then your car will be in the movie, as part of this shot. And people are like, sweet, my car could get to be, Weird Al fans or whatever. People just are, like doing that type of stuff. But like, cool, my car could be in a movie. So all these people brought their cars, and so they got all these cars. People drove their cars to the location, parked in this parking lot, and they were like, great, all the people that brought their car, you have to leave. And they were like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, you gotta leave, but you can't take your car. And this particular like filming location is out in like the middle of nowhere, like, you know, BFE, Oklahoma. Like you know, if you like if you want to leave, you you can, but you gotta leave your car. So and a lot of the people are like, well, I'm not gonna leave my car here. And it's like, where am I gonna go? I'm out in the middle of nowhere. So they stayed so they could stay with their cars. And technically, because they hired the people's cars and you can't pay cars, they were able to have all the people in the shot because the people were just with their cars. It's like we weren't filming the people. We were just we just wanted the cars. The people just came with the cars. So because you don't have to pay cars. They're not people. They don't expect a paycheck. And it's not like the cars are doing anything except sitting there. So, so this is a weird loophole of, yeah, we weren't using the extras. We were just using the cars. If the person just happened to be standing near their car when we did the shot, that's on them. Yeah. So,
oops.
Yeah.
Yeah. These cars were underage. They needed adult supervision.
Yeah. Because it's like nowadays, like with like special effects and stuff, when you need a crowd, you can do like, you can film like a bunch of people and maybe like switch them up, have them change their clothes, and then film them again, and then you can just composite them together.
Yep.
You can do that. Not for $5 million. Not with a $5 million budget. So, but I thought that was absolutely funny. Because that was one story I did not know. But so yeah, so they managed to make the movie for $5 million. Some of it was filmed in Los Angeles, but not most of it was in Oklahoma. And but that budget, they used all the $5 million, and therefore there was no money left over for promotion. Because as we've also talked about, when people talk about movie budgets, they'll be like, it cost $100 million to make, and they spent $50 million in marketing. There was no marketing budget for this. So, but Orion thought that because it tested really well, that they were like, well, the dedicated Weird Al fans are going to be like, absolutely, I'm going to go out and see this. That being said, the hindsight being what it is, 1989 was a big year. Just looking at the highest grossing films of 1989, these are the types of movies that came out in 1989. And a number of these were summer of 1989. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was number one at the box office for the year. Batman, the Tim Burton Batman. Back to the Future Part 2. Dead Poets Society. Lethal Weapon 2. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Ghostbusters 2. And Disney's The Little Mermaid, which helped kick off the Disney Renaissance. Those are just some of the top grossing movies of 1989. Like, even just Indiana Jones. I mean, the fact that this movie starts with a parody of the opening of Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark tells you, like, everything you need to know about how huge I mean, we just talked about Indiana Jones recently and how huge of a franchise it was and still is. And you would think the third Indiana Jones movie being released that summer might have been a clue that you're going to have some competition in the box office. Just a little. Am I wrong? I don't think I am.
Mm-mm.
I think I'm right. I'm pretty sure. I know I'm right. I'm looking at this from the year 2024, but still, granted, I was 6 when 1989 rolled around, but still, I'm pretty sure if I had been old enough then, I could have told you that, like the third Indiana Jones film is going to be like the biggest thing ever.
Pretty much, yes. I mean, yeah. We're kind of used to movie schedules getting shuffled around in the last handful of years, and it's kind of really been commonplace, I should say. I mean, it's happened before, but not to the extent of what we've seen in recently. But I kind of get this feeling like maybe they should have moved it to a less busy movie time, like October or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then again, this was like, Weird Al was pretty popular. Late 80s, so maybe they were thinking, oh yeah, a movie with him and it's totally gonna do well.
Okay.
Sadly,
or not. I mean, just the week that it opened July 21st, 1989. Mm-hmm. That same date was also the opening of When Harry Met Sally. 2 weeks before had been Lethal Weapon 2. The week before had been License to Kill, the latest James Bond movie.
Yeah.
There was a re-release of Disney's Peter Pan. And then the following week would be Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah. And was Batman in theaters or was it coming up? I can't remember.
Batman came out the month before.
Okay.
Yes. And that was June 23rd. Batman and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids opened the same week, and the week before was Ghostbusters 2. So, the week before that, Star Trek 5. So yeah, I don't. Maybe like September. Yeah. There's not a whole lot in September. I mean, there probably would have been spillover from the summer stuff, but September wasn't a huge month. Yeah, they could have pushed it back a couple of months. But nope. Not happening. So, but that is okay, because in this case, well, I mean, it's okay for us as fans. Not so much for Orion, because they ended up going bankrupt. And this ended in 91, and had only been released on like VHS and like Laserdisc by the time that Orion went bankrupt. So then it was stuck in legal limbo as far as who could distribute it. So then, you're lucky if you had a copy, which thankfully, whoever kids, parents' house that I went to all those years ago for, a Saturday afternoon of kid fun running around their huge yard with water balloons and super soakers and stuff. And then when we'd all ran ourselves ragged, they put us inside to eat chips and pizza or whatever and watch a movie, and it was this movie, and I'm sure it was on VHS. So thankfully, whoever that kid was, that their parents, picked up that VHS copy from probably Montgomery Ward or something, or Sears, I don't know, or Marsh was Indiana. And we watched it. And that was my very first exposure to Weird Al. And at the time I had no idea who this guy was and what this whole thing was about. But and then years later, when Bad Hair Day came out, and my cousin got a copy of it, and I was like, oh, that's that guy in that movie that I saw that time ago. Made the connection, and my life has been weirder ever since. So, but yeah, there was, unless you found just an old dusty copy on Laserdisc or VHS somewhere, we went a little over a decade without being able to get our hands on this movie until they finally released it on DVD in 2002. And that's the copy I have. So my DVD copy is more than 2 decades old. Thankfully, for the 35th anniversary, they have released an anniversary edition Blu-ray, which is nice. So we need to get that and add it to our collection, which is nice. But yeah, and the DVD is fun because what you could tell that they were like, oh goodness, we finally can release it. Mm-hmm. Hallelujah. And there are all sorts of Easter eggs and bonus features on this. Kids, back in the day when DVDs were a newer thing, there would be these things like secret menus and secret things that you had to use the remote to try and find. And it would give you a little something that wasn't listed on like the paperwork or the box or whatever. This has several of those on both sides. It's a 2-sided DVD. It's widescreen on one side, standard size on the other, full screen on the other side. A lot of the bonus features you can access from either side, but like the secret stuff, you have to be on one side or the other to access. But it's got like it has like the deleted scenes, but it's not just like, like a menu of deleted scenes or just like a push play and like watch a bunch of deleted scenes one after the other. No, Al gives his commentary in between, like, why do you want to see these? There is a reason they were cut, because they're crap,
So but they're still interesting to watch, especially the movie.
Yes,
you're like, ooh, new content.
Yeah. So when they finally got the ability to release it on DVD, they're like, throw everything you can on it. People have been chomping at the bit for 13 years for this thing. So give the people what they want. So of course there is commentary from, you can listen to it with commentary from Weird Al and Emo Phillips and Fran Drescher. The cast on this is wild. I mean, obviously you got Weird Al as George Newman, kind of our hero of the story. He's this kind of guy that's just kind of lost in life because he's got this really vivid imagination, and he just hasn't found a way to make it work for him. So it causes him to bounce from job to job to job, and with his friend Bob goes along with him. And George is marrying this girl, baby marries her after the end, is dating this girl named Terry, who's a dental hygienist, played by Victoria Jackson, who was on SNL at the time. She's understanding to a point. Their relationship hits a rocky bit there for a while. But it turns out that George's uncle, Harvey, wins the deed to U62, which is a UHF station on the edge of town, in this unnamed town that this movie is set in, because they don't specify. Somewhere far enough away that Uncle Harvey has to fly from Los Angeles back to wherever it is this town is. It could be in Oklahoma for all we know. I don't, but Uncle Harvey has a gambling problem. It just so happens that he was bluffing with a pair of sevens and won the deed to this UHF station. Wow, kids, I know we've explained records to you, among other things. Now, back in the day, when you had television and you had to turn the knob to change the channels, you had two frequencies, kind of like on a radio where you have FM and AM. On TV, you had U and V and FH or HF. Weird saying it, not just saying UHF. UHF, VHF. Kind of the same idea. And your V's were your big network, your NBCs, your CBSs, things like that. You want to watch Wonderful World of Disney or Wonderful World of Color? It's going to be on your ABC, which is probably, whatever number VHF station. Your UHF will be like your local, before cable. Once cable became a thing, it would be like, your local cable access channel, kind of like what Wayne's World it was aired on, except this is even before cable. And those tended to be like, your really old reruns of stuff that eventually people were paying for to watch on Nick at Night. So obviously,
if you have Me TV, which is a channel that just plays old stuff, that's kind of what was on there. Is that sort of thing. So it was. It just kind of seemed like it was a channel that was more local stuff, but if like your local whatever didn't produce enough, then they just put on old reruns of things.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That they could get the airing. Yeah, they could get the airing license for like pennies on the dollar, I'm sure.
Yeah.
If not for nothing. Just
station and we're gonna play stuff and that's it.
Yeah, it's the kind of stuff that your great uncle would fall asleep to. Because he fell asleep in his recliner while the TV was still on.
Yeah. If you flip channels and you're like, oh hey, I haven't watched this show in forever, you'll sit down and watch it. Or if it's after it's Saturday morning cartoons are over, there's nothing interesting on PBS, but then you'll keep flipping channels all the way around. You're like, oh hey, it's I don't know, whatever.
Plan 9 from Outer. No, that's probably too popular. Whatever the real crappy equivalent of Plan 9 from Outer Space is. Yeah. Cat Women from Mars.
Yes.
Would be your Saturday afternoon feature film presentation.
Maybe someone's running Gunsmoke reruns. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what that was.
Yeah. Aunt Esther, George's aunt, convinces Harvey to let George and Bob become the new station managers for the network, for the TV station, while they move to California. And so George and Bob take over, and of course the two employees, 2 or 3 employees at the station, that makes you wonder how they pay anybody, but whatever. They find Pamela Finkelstein, who's working as a receptionist, played by Fran Drescher.
Oh, and brilliantly done, by the way.
In her Fran voice.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the Fran Fine voice. So,
oh yes,
Fran Drescher does not sound like that.
No.
She is still nasally, but it's not Fran Fine nasally. But Pamela's been working there for a couple years. Really wants to be on the air doing news, but can't because she gets a new boss seemingly every week.
Yes. Kind of hard for me to make my move.
Yeah. It's hard to move, get a promotion when every week I got a new boss. And Philo, the chief engineer, played by a practically unrecognizable Anthony Geary. And I wouldn't be surprised if people, like, if they weren't paying attention to the credits and who was playing who outside of the recognizable faces. But if you don't know who that is, then you never watched General Hospital in the 80s.
Exactly.
You know about Luke and Laura.
Yes.
He's
Luke Spencer, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Yeah. Doesn't look anything like Luke.
Because I completely forgot. And then when I saw the end credits, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, hold on, let me go to IMDb.
Yeah.
That Anthony Geary? Yes.
Yes. That Anthony Geary.
Like, one of the most famous watched TV fictional weddings ever be watched. In all of the history of television was the wedding of Luke and Laura. So, yeah. It was a big deal for soap operas and television and daytime television in general. So,
well, and especially the cameo of said wedding crasher as well.
Yeah. So there's like your two like major employees. There's a few other guys too. Like the guy that runs the camera, he is also in the Fat video, and that's not any sort of dig at him. If you've seen Weird Al's video parody of Michael Jackson's Bad, which is called Fat, he's in that. He's one of the gang members. He's like, offering skinny Weird Al stuff out of his coat pockets. I got a sandwich in here somewhere. So obviously the station is literally and figuratively being held together by dumb luck.
You're in chewing gum.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah. Because like the door is literally coming off the hinges, the front door. So with George's wild imagination, they start coming up with these ideas for programming. In the meantime, George offers to take a piece of mail that was wrongly delivered to them to R.J. Fletcher, who owns the Channel 8 network, VHF station. And we get introduced to R.J. Fletcher, played by Kevin McCarthy. So if you have not seen the OG Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the black and white version, then you don't know Kevin McCarthy. So, because he is, honestly, it doesn't seem like he aged a whole lot from Invasion of the Body Snatchers to this. Yeah, but RJ Fletcher is a jackass. Like, he only cares about making money. He's mean to everybody, even his own son. He does not suffer fools, lightly, and through some circumstances, we meet the station janitor, Stanley Spadowski, played by Michael Richards, which by the time this movie was released, Seinfeld would air like 2 weeks later. Premiere like 2 weeks later. So, but Michael knew Weird Al and he was a fan. So, although even then, apparently Michael was tough to work with. Just in general, apparently he's quite tough to work with. He's very picky about things, but he's hilarious in this. Stanley, he's your comic relief. He's not necessarily the brightest crayon in the box, but he means well. And that's not necessarily something to frown upon. And poor Stanley gets fired and loses his mop, which is very important to him. And George offers to Stanley to come work at the station as a janitor. And in the process of George and Terry's relationship going down the toilet, Stanley ends up taking over the kid show that George was trying to host and was doing a terrible job. And Stanley's so much better at it because he has a maturity level of little kids. And relates to them very well, and that sets off a chain reaction of U62 becoming a very, very popular station. Pamela starts doing the news. Philo gets his own show, Secrets of the Universe. They do all sorts of like game shows, Wheel of Fish, just hilarious. Hosted by Cooney, who is George's, I guess, landlord, or at the very least neighbor. He owns a karate studio right next door to George and Bob's apartment, so much to the point where you can hear them doing karate classes and stuff's getting knocked off their walls. We get to see all sorts of stuff from, like I said, the game shows to trailers for like made for TV movies like Gandhi 2, played by Jay Levy, plays Gandhi. So, there are so many, like there's a lot of, because what Weird Al does really well is he has his finger on what is popular at the time. He is always seemingly aware of what is it in a time period. Hence the polka that he just released this past Friday. Brand new Weird Al music, new polka, complete with a bunch of earworms of songs that have been quite popular in the last several years since we last got a polka. And things like Gandhi, if you know Gandhi, you'll know why Gandhi 2 is so funny, because it's everything that the real Gandhi was not. He didn't hang out with women. He didn't eat meat. He didn't use guns. He didn't beat people up. They actually, the Ferrari that Gandhi comes peeling up in and then ends up fighting a guy, Jay Levy, I guess, got a little too excited when would pretend fighting that guy and actually smashed the guy's face into the Ferrari and put a dent in the Ferrari.
Wow.
It was a little one, but still, and thankfully the film studio's insurance covered the repair, but still. But yeah, that's Jay Levy, our fellow scriptwriter and director as Gandhi. We've got Conan the librarian.
Sorry, these are overdue.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got like your you got commercials for local again to whatever town this is supposed to be, this unnamed town, local businesses, which, if you've ever watched ads for hometown businesses, you know that they don't necessarily have a lot of money to put into their ads. So especially like your car dealers, your car commercials, car dealership commercials, those are usually pretty wild. So you got Crazy Eddie threatening to club a seal, the baby seal, to get a better deal. And I love the seal's just in the back, like, I'll club a seal, get a better deal. And the seal's just nodding its head, like, yeah, he's gonna bash my head in. It's hilarious. And of course, our personal favorite, Special the City. Special the City. Which we quote all of the time. And then you've got some more like live television programming. So George hosts a it starts out supposed to be like a local, like get to know some of your local, people in your neighborhood type show, Town Talk. And he is his guest is the shop, like high school shop teacher, played by Emo Phillips, who proceeds to then cut off his thumb with the table saw, which is also hilarious, and we quote all of the time, especially one of the alternative versions of it that's in the deleted scenes. So that's absolutely funny. I got to see Emo Phillips actually open for Weird Al several years ago, so it was kind of hilarious to like actually see Emo Phillips in the flesh. And he's exactly the same, except all digits are attached. What's funny is when they would go to like there were some places like when this got to the point where it could be shown on like TV, the bit with Emo cutting off his finger would be maybe cut down a little bit because of the amount of fake blood that's shown. Some people took issue with that, but apparently more people took issue with Conan the Librarian cutting that guy in half because his books were a little overdue.
Huh.
Even though that's not really bloody at all.
No.
Because it looks really fake. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And then some people had issues with Raoul throwing poodles out the window. No poodles were harmed in the
making of this
movie. Weird Al is a huge fan of poodles in general, so he definitely no poodles or any other albums were harmed in the filming of this movie. Unfortunately, the gentleman who played Raoul, Trinidad Silva, was killed when he was hit by a drunk driver while the film was still in production. So another scene, which would have shown the poodles getting their revenge, they did film it with a body double and just had the face and stuff covered with these poodles that are now trying to get their revenge. So you couldn't tell that it wasn't Trinidad, but it was one of those scenes that ended up getting cut for time. And then if you watch the credits, you will see that the movie is dedicated to Trinidad. Because that's unfortunate that he lost his life when he probably could have had maybe a pretty good career, because he only is in 2 scenes in this entire movie. We first see his TV show Raoul's Wild Kingdom, which is in his apartment. He's doing all sorts of things with animals. Apparently turtles are nature's suction cup. And then when he gets his next delivery, which again, very quotable and an homage to another film, badgers Badges. We don't need no
we don't need no
stinking
badgers. Yep.
Yes. I love it. So that's another program that ends up on U62, even though both George and Bob have no idea how Ro got this show because neither of them hired it. But it turns out Uncle Harvey's gambling gets the better of him. He now owes his bookie, Big Louie, $75,000 in cash and has slightly over 48 hours to procure it. And but it just so happens that R.J. Fletcher doesn't like the fact that a puny little UHF station has become the number one station in town, and advertisers are pulling their money, and so he happens to find out that Uncle Harvey owns the station, calls him, offers him the cash, which would get Big Louie off of Harvey's back. But George and crew find out, calls Uncle Harvey. It's like, I don't know where I'm gonna get the money, but give me a chance to try and get it and match the offer, which will save Uncle Harvey and save the station, because technically Fletcher can't own two stations at the same network, so he's like, I'll just turn it into a parking lot. And their bright idea for raising the money, telethon, which, if you've ever watched your local PBS station, kids, you know all about the telethon.
Yep.
To support your local TV stations. So, and of course, Stanley is the big draw. And what they're doing is they're offering shares, certificates essentially of the station, so that it'll be owned by everybody, kind of like the Green Bay Packers.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but in this case, a
Good way
TV
of putting
station.
Yep.
Yeah. And while Stanley's on the air, lots of people are calling and coming in person and dropping off their money and buying shares. But of course, Fletcher is aware of this, sends his goons to kidnap Stanley, which causes the telethon to slow down. George realizes that with the help of Philo, who has planted cameras inside the Channel 8 building, sees that Stanley has been kidnapped. George runs off and has Rambo type daydream about how he's going to rescue Stanley. There's again a lot of references, a lot of gags in the whole thing. And they end up saving Stanley. And right before the deadline hits, they haven't quite reached the money amount that they need, and R.J. Fletcher is all like, he tried to put the kibosh on U62 a little bit earlier by trying to do a kind of a live report from his the station to try and tell it the townspeople that that U62 is a menace to society, but he does not know that, again, Philo, with his amazing engineering camera work, has caught footage of R.J. Fletcher bad-mouthing the people of the community and airs that instead, and it's absolutely hilarious. From what I understand, they wanted R.J. Fletcher to just be like the worst. Like, you wanted to be like the little old lady at the end of this movie and just you want to knee him in the crotch. of just how much of a jackass he is. I mean, what he gets at the end of this movie, he absolutely deserves. He deserves to get kneed in the crotch. He deserves to get his license revoked by the FCC at the very least. And the thing is, I guess Kevin McCarthy, like, he would be so serious when they were filming, you know, trying to be this big jackass. And then when they'd cut, he would just bust out laughing because he just found it so ridiculous. You know, he was like, which goes to show how good of an actor he is. You know, that he would, you know, was so evil in this, but then the minute that the camera stops rolling, he's like, I'm just kidding, guys. You know. Oh. So, but there's another ongoing gag of this guy that's a seemingly homeless guy, this bum. And apparently when they were casting this movie, like, everybody wanted to play the bum. Like, so many people, like, came out of the woodwork to play this particular role, which, you know, considering he would play a bum the following year on an episode of Night Court, you know, typecast, I don't know. But it ended up going to Vance Colby Jr., but, you know, he pops out of nowhere and, you know, asks for change. And the first time we see him, it's George and Terry, and George is like, oh yeah, I think I've got some change, and, you know, has his hand out, and it's actually, he's wanting to make change for $1. He's not asking for change. So then we see him again later, he pops up, this time it's RJ Fletcher, and of course we know RJ Fletcher is not going to be, you know, nearly as nice as George, so he just gives him, like, you know, the few pennies that he's got in his pocket. And the bum gets all excited when he's looking at the coins, and then we find out later at the end of the movie when he pops back up again and thanks RJ for giving him a double die penny, where penny's been stamped twice.
Oh.
And they're worth, like, a lot of money. So he, like, pawned it or sold it or whatever, bought himself a Rolex. Like, what's a bum gonna do with a Rolex? But still, he buys himself a Rolex and uses the last of the money to buy shares in U62, which puts them over the top for the $75,000 to give to Big Louie. Uncle Harvey's off the hook, signs the deed over to the, you know, George and everybody, so they save the station. RJ Fletcher gets what's coming to him. His goons get what's coming to them during the fight of during the rescue of Stanley, even before George shows up to help rescue Stanley. Stanley's doing his best to fight back. He gets his mop back because that's his mop. It was his mop. That mop had been given to him when he was 8 years old, and they had never been apart. It just so happens that 8 was the age that Weird Al got his first accordion. So that explains why it's, yeah, it's 8 years old. And Stanley's doing his best to, you know, protect himself. But then George shows up. They do their best, and then thankfully Cooney and his karate, his fellow karate teachers, not students, because they're all stupid, also show up to help. They come bursting out of the closet and go, supplies, because it's a supply closet. And Terry comes back, and she and George make up, and Philo says goodbye because he realizes that his time on Earth is done and he has to go back to his home planet, the planet of Zarkon. Which, you know, for 80s special effects, I mean, it's like claymation stop motion-esque, but I think it still looks pretty good.
Oh yeah.
I think that's aged. I think that's aged pretty well because clay doesn't really age, I guess.
It's a practical effect. It's actually
it is.
Real.
Yeah.
So
So
it looks good.
yeah, they actually were gonna have it be like more from a distance, and realized it looked so good that they're like, no, we're gonna give this a close up. And I think they made the right call there. And everybody lives happily ever after because Channel 8 gets the plug pulled. RJ Fletcher's son gets karma because he had tripped poor Noodles earlier and made him drop his camera, which always made me so sad.
Oh, I know. It's just like justice for Noodles.
Yes, yeah. So Noodles thankfully gets an opportunity and trips Richard Fletcher into a pile of mud, and he ends up just like absolutely caked in mud, and like,
oh, so sad.
Yeah. Noodles is like, oopsie!
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. But yeah.
Gravity's fickle, isn't it?
Yep. Yep. Everybody lives, the people that deserve to live happily ever after. So, of course, Dr. Demento has a cameo in this. As you see him in the crowd at Stanley's show. He's really pointed out when they're doing like the coming soon on, coming this weekend on U62, and they're showing like ads for the upcoming shows like Bowling for Burgers and Celebrity Mud Wrestling with this week's special guest Mikhail Gorbachev, complete with birthmark on his head. Strip solitaire with a guy that looks like a weird overweight Saddam Hussein. But there's the crowd at Stanley Spadowski's clubhouse, and Stanley shoots whipped cream into one of the adults' mouths. That is Dr. Demento. He is credited on IMDb as Barry Hansen, which I believe is his actual name, but that's Dr. Demento, who is the guy that gave Weird Al his big break, as we all know. And of course we see Al's band in the Money for Nothing Beverly Hillbillies music video. So they get some screen time, and I love this movie. I absolutely love this. It's so just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Like I mean, it's definitely a very particular type of comedy, and we all know comedy is very subjective.
Yes.
But this is just, this is my type of comedy. And obviously I love Weird Al. I've loved Weird Al for decades. Like I said, I did not know what I was being shown the first time I saw this, but it got into my subconscious and just kind of stuck there until the right time came along for me to make the connection to this wild CD that my cousin shared with me on one of our overlapping trips to grandma's in Florida. And the first time I heard Amish Paradise, and somehow made the connection, my life has been forever changed. It's weirder for the better. So this is a desert island movie for me. Like, or if I was stranded somewhere and like I had everything I needed to survive, and I just needed something that a handful of things to keep me entertained in the meantime, this would be towards the top of movies that I would take with me to a desert island. I love this movie. I can quote it forwards and backwards, inside out, upside down. I don't know how many times I've seen it. When last time Weird Al came to Indy, the night, it was like the night or two before the concert. It was going to be at the outdoor venue downtown Indy. The big IMAX theater downtown did a screening of UHF.
Oh, nice.
So I got to see it on an IMAX screen. So it was pretty awesome.
Oh, that must have been something.
Yeah, they were playing Weird Al songs, over the speakers beforehand and then after.
Oh, nice.
Which is always exciting. And the funny thing is, it's like every time this is one of those movies. It's like almost every time I watch it, I catch something new that I never did before, or because now after doing Gold Standard for so long and seeing so many quote unquote classic movies, I'm getting more of the references. Like for the longest time, I knew it was a reference to something, but I didn't know what. But it wasn't until after I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind that I understood the mashed potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Bits.
For the Devil's Tower.
Yeah, for the Devil's Tower.
Yeah.
It's like, this means something. This is important. I was like, I know that's a reference to something, but I have no idea what. Until I saw Close Encounters, I was like, oh, that's the thing! I get that right. I'm like Steve Rogers, like, I understand that reference! Or I'll catch like gags, because a lot of times there's a lot of frenetic stuff just going on. It's very visually can just be like all over the place. So you kind of have to choose where you're going to look. So if you look at a different spot that you didn't look before, you might see something that you didn't notice before. And I think that's what makes a lot of movies rewatchable. Is if you can walk away with something a little, even if it's just tiny little thing, if you can walk away with, feeling like you almost watch it for the first time because you're walking away with a little something new, I think is what gives a lot of movies staying power. And obviously it's now a quote unquote cult classic, especially for Weird Al fans.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's more available to us, like I said, there's now a 35th anniversary edition that you can now purchase. So while it bombed at the box office, not for trying, but it was just, this was one of those circumstances where it's like, unless you are a recognizable, like worldwide recognizable property, you weren't going to win that summer of '89. I'm sorry. You had to be a Ghostbuster. You had to be Indiana Jones. You had, It's
kind of like if it had been a year, if it had been a year like what this movie going year is shaping out to be. I mean, Twisters is kicking ass at the box office, and it's kind of because there's not a whole lot to really get excited about. If it had been a year like this, it might have done better. But yeah, it's just it just sounds like it was just bad timing, bad luck, and
and honestly, I don't think a marketing budget probably would have helped.
Probably not.
So I mean, they did try. They did try a little bit of marketing with what little money they had, and they tried at least for one attempt to use the Indiana Jones stuff, hoping that people would be like, "Oh, Indiana Jones," and kind of do that thing. But again,
I kind of think these sorts of comedies they just do better on home video. It could be like I'm thinking about Spaceballs and stuff like that. It's like, especially in 80s and 90s, So I'm
Spaceballs, I think, did okay.
It did okay, but it wasn't
and
like
the studio didn't go bankrupt immediately after.
That is true, but I'm just thinking of like, I don't know. But no, yeah,
I mean, even again, 89 Princess Bride didn't do that well.
Yeah.
So
but that was one that did better on home video.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's very nebulous, I should say.
Yeah. And that's and when you think about it, that's kind of interesting because we talk about some of these cult classics, how for a lot of them it was the home release is what got them to become popular. This didn't have that option. Like it got a home release, but it was very limited before
it
went bankrupt. So if you didn't buy your VHS or Laserdisc copy in like that 1 year window, you were waiting over a decade to be able to get your hands on a physical media version of this movie. But yet it's still throughout time. Like I said, I watched it sometime in the 90s, in the early 90s, because somebody owned a VHS copy of it. But then I didn't see it again for ages. But then, when it got released in 2002, it went immediately to the top of DVD sales. Yeah, because people were ready for it. So I think, I haven't read so much somewhere, but I'd imagine this probably got the pass the tape around copy.
Oh yeah.
Copy paste repeat.
Yeah. I am sure it did. I'm sure it did.
Probably like it did. So
that was a thing.
Yeah. But it's just kind of wild that the window to originally get your hands on a physical copy was so small, but it built up with also Weird Al's name got a lot bigger about the same time that Orion went bankrupt in the early 90s, because he did not focus on doing a new album while he was working on the movie. Obviously, because this took a lot of time. But once they were done with the film, it was like, okay, well, time to get back into the studio. And it just so happens that he continued to stay friends with Victoria Jackson, and Victoria was still at SNL, and it was through Victoria that he was able to excuse me, connect with Kurt Cobain to get permission to do a parody of Smells Like Teen Spirit. Because Al, he doesn't have to, but as a professional courtesy, he always likes to get permission from the artist, not their people, because we know what happened with Coolio. But with the actual artist, or as close enough to the artist as possible, that's not like their people. And thankfully with Victoria, he had that in because it happened that Nirvana was going to be the musical guest on SNL. So he was through Victoria, he was able to get on the phone with Kurt, and Kurt was already a fan of Weird Al, which helped. But he was like, it's like, is it going to be about food? Yeah, that was Kurt's only question. It was like, is it going to be about food? And he's like, no, it's going to be how nobody understands what you're saying in your song. Like, sweet. Oh, because even then, people understood that if Weird Al wanted to make having Weird Al parody one of your songs was like the highest honor in the music industry. And even Nirvana recognized that. But Smells Like Nirvana would go on Off the Deep End, and while it would still, Bad Hair Day and the whole Coolio Amish Paradise thing helped launch Al's recognition even further, but this was like a big hit. Like Al's like first like big hit was Smells Like Nirvana. We know where it's gone from there. We've done a whole episode about Weird Al.
Yep.
It's just wild. This little movie that didn't do that well still, did it was like the like
a movie that could.
It was a little movie that could. It's a little movie that like other things just kind of splintered off of it, or it helped push other things along. So it's like, well, the movie itself may have not been a winner in the box office. Its importance in pop culture, especially the Weird Al universe, it's very important, not just film, but because of what it did for Al's career. So I think that's just kind of cool. So if you've not seen UHF, please do.
Yeah.
If you have, watch it again.
It is available on Tubi, which is one of the free streaming thingies with ads. But Tubi, I find they're not super intrusive with their ads. It's actually pretty tolerable. So there you go. So go check it out.
Yeah. And if you have seen it and you maybe want to watch it again, but don't just want to watch it for the sake of watching it, feel free to turn it on while listening to my episode of Drunk Cinema.
There you go.
With Sam and Charles. You can listen to me quote the movie while drunk.
I can't imagine that is an infrequent occurrence in your house.
What, me quoting this movie drunk?
Yes. That doesn't happen. That's not like normal Saturday night at your place, right?
Yeah, actually. I'm not saying no, but I'm not I cannot confirm nor deny that particular factoid, but if you could see me right now, you would see my head moving in a particular direction.
I guess which direction.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, Rachel, but I'm just kind of like, But there you go. Cool. Well, anything else?
I would say I feel like I did all the talking. Like, please, if you guys have like 2 cents to throw in, please do.
Well, I'm good. How are you, Holly?
Doing good.
Good. Well, Rachel, it's fun to hear you gush about it because it's something you love. So, by all means. But yeah. So, if any of our listeners want to chime in with their thoughts on UHF, Weird Al, anything tangentially related, or even anything we talked about in our news and feedback segments, drop us a line with some feedback. Our email address is fiveishfangirls@gmail.com. You can also visit our website, which is thefiveishfangirls.com, and there you will find links to all of our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. You'll definitely want to be following the Instagram and such. For Rachel is going to Gen Con? Yes. This week. So look for those updates and posts if you want to live vicariously through her adventures. You can also, we talked about the website. So leave comments there. We'll read those out as feedback if you feel so inclined. And also find us wherever you download podcasts. I'm sure you'll find it somewhere because that's where we are. And then if you want to help support the podcast in a financial way, we have a Patreon. We also have a merch shop where you can find fun designs and quotes and other fangirly things on bags and stickers and such. So check that out. But we thank you as always for your listening, your support, for your feedback, for all the cool things y'all do, for being there, being our audience, and just having a good time with us. So thanks for hanging out. Hope we make it worth your while.
I guess that's it for now. We'll be back next week with probably a truckload of news from Fandom Christmas. So
yes,
look forward to seeing what comes from San Diego this weekend. But until then, we shall sign off for this week.
This is Chrissy saying goodnight from Salt Lake City.
This is Holly from Wisconsin saying good evening.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Remember, sometimes you just have to take what life gives you. Because life is like a mop, and sometimes life gets full of dirt, crud, bugs, and hairballs and stuff. You got to clean it out. You got to put it in there and rinse it off. Start all over again. And sometimes life sticks to the floor so bad, a mop, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. You got to get down there like with a toothbrush, you got to really scrub because you got to get it off. You got to really try to get it off. But if that doesn't work, you can't give up. You gotta stand right up. You gotta run to the window and say, "Hey, these floors are dirty as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore."
There is some deep philosophy in this movie.
Thank you, our Fiveish fam, for joining us on this week's geeky journey. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Stay connected with us on our website, thefiveishfangirls.com, and follow us on most social media with @FiveishFangirls. Plus, check out our nonprofit, Fangirls Give Back, to see how we're making a positive impact in our community. Until next time, stay nerdy and let the squee continue.